As a small business owner, have you ever had a really reliable, strong, go-to employee that started to miss deadlines, seemed a little on edge, wasn't delivering like they used to? Now, sometimes that can be they're just don't have the capacity, don't have the experience to meet up with the demands of the business. But as human beings, oftentimes life happens and things are going on that we are not aware of. There's a quote that kind of floats around on LinkedIn, and I'll paraphrase, but it says, be kind to the person beside you because they could be giving everything they have just to hold it together. So how do we address that? How do we decide, are you just unable to do the job, or are you struggling to get by in your personal life? And working with small business owners, I know oftentimes we take it personally and we say, this person isn't delivering. And they'll call me and they'll say, I'm going to sit them down and I'm going to tell them. And I always say, you know what, why don't you start with this? Hey, is everything okay? Are you doing all right? Start there. And that's the conversation we're going to have today. Mental health is a big issue these days. And we are so fortunate to have Dr. Christopher Taylor. We're going to call him Chris. He's given me permission to call him Chris. We're going to do away with the formalities. Chris owns the Taylor Counseling Group, which is one of the largest providers of mental health outpatient services in Texas. Very cool. He's also the president of the Counseling for the Future. He's created an app called Epiphany, and it's epiphany.com. We'll give you that information here in a bit, which is a preventative mental health app, which hopefully we'll hear more about because I think that's super cool. And his life's also falling apart right now, so he's kind of walking the talk. Welcome to the Key Hire Small Business Podcast. My name's Corey Harlock. I'm going to be your host today. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like, hit the follow, hit the subscribe button, whatever you got to do. We'd love to be able to send our new episodes and information directly to you. So, Matt, without further ado, let's bring Chris on the show. Dr. Taylor, how you doing, bud?
I think I'm great, but I'm probably really terrible. But we're just going to go with great anyways, because, like you said, life happens. I don't think life happens to you. I think it happens for you. And so I'm just going to push forward, man.
Very cool. So I said your life's falling apart. We kind of... people don't get the 30,000 foot overview, they're not going to listen to anything else you say because they're going to wonder what the hell that means. So give us the 30,000 foot overview.
Yeah. So basically, I went on a camping trip with my daughter this weekend with a bunch of girls. It's like a daddy-daughter camp out thing. And I got sick from one of the kids. So I'm dying of some kind of respiratory virus right now. I rolled my ankle while I was out there, to come back home to find out that we now have a slab leak in the middle of our house, right in the kitchen. I've been living out of an Airbnb, and also the wonderful lady that cuts my hair, she decided to not be a hairdresser anymore. So,
and as I said to you, I think that's the worst of all of it, is losing your hairdresser. Man, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that.
So yeah, that's where we are right now. But you know what? Life's great, and it just gives me more together time with my family. We're a lot closer right now, both literally and figuratively, as we suffer together. So,
Great. Very cool. So, hey, we don't like to spend too much time on the formalities because this is a help first podcast. So we like to get right into it. So, you deal with mental health, and I'm sure you work with people that own business, or obviously people that work for people, right? And as I kind of said off the top, I've seen it as well, where oftentimes we have people in our business that have been like steady Eddie, reliable, right-hand person, and out of nowhere, something changes. And sometimes it's just work, right? They're overwhelmed, they can't deal with it. But sometimes there's things going on under the surface, so maybe walk us through what are some signals we should be looking for, or different ways to think about it? I mean, this is what you do. So if I'm a business owner and I'm thinking, hey, I have someone in my business right now that fits that description. Mm-hmm. what should they be looking for? You know, we'll get into some solutions here down the road, but let's kind of look at the discovery side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Wall Street Journal released an article a couple weeks ago that said $2.5 trillion was the total economic impact on the loss of production in the United States directly related to mental health in the workplace, which meant that a lot more of your employees are not in a great headspace. Obviously, we all just went through COVID. Obviously, we had a very rough transition into that and out of that. Telehealth has been wonderful, but isolation is not good for us. We are not creatures that isolate.
And I don't want to cut you off, but how big an impact has COVID had on people's mental health? Like, you know, people speculate, but you're living in that world. Like, is it for real? Are people really still kind of equilibrium's off?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to see a lot of studies coming out here in the near future that the isolation from COVID has had on our pre-K and kindergarten populations is they're going to struggle with socialization as they move forward in their educational system. We're going to see some interesting studies come out of the workplace as kids that were graduating during COVID graduate with the lack of skill sets that they didn't learn and gain. So I think we're going to be reeling from these effects for a long time, not just from an economic standpoint, but from a social development as well.
Awesome. Okay. And so even beyond COVID, you know, like you said, you have a slab leak in the middle of your house.
Yeah.
Someone goes through a divorce. Someone has their spouse gets diagnosed with a terminal illness. They get that. You know, there's a million things that can happen, and we're all kind of living that human experience. So, what are some of the what are some of the signs people might flash, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that as a business owner, if you see them, you might go, there might be something bigger going on here?
Yeah, I think the first thing you said, Corey, was spot on. Like you're going to notice a change in their behavior. So your top sales guy is all of a sudden not going to be the top sales guy, or he's going to continue to do that because that's what he's investing in. But everything else is going to kind of fall apart. Like there's just going to be a massive change in his behavior, or even a subtle change in our outlook, comments that we might make, ways that we present ourselves, weight gain, weight loss, also at times.
Could there be like a perceived lack of caring?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We get empathy fatigue. If you have so much stuff going on in your own personal life, it can be really difficult to care for others or to care about others. And so if you kind of see that starting to develop in the workplace, that's definitely a big red sign of, hey, this guy's probably not trying to be a jerk. He's probably just got a lot going on and doesn't know how to process it right now.
Empathy fatigue. Is that kind of what you just detailed there? Like if you're outputting a lot of emotion, it's hard to hold emotions for other people and kind of, excuse my language, but give a shit what's going on in other people's world.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. We actually struggle with that a lot in the mental health space. Therapists struggle a lot with empathy fatigue because we take on so many emotions from other people during the session, during the therapeutic process that can be a problem that contributes to burnout for sure.
Cool. All right. So we're talking about someone who has been fairly so that's maybe this. I'm just kind of, as I was saying it, I was like, hold on. So we have the steady Eddie who's now kind of getting a little rocky. Yeah. Well, what about the people that are kind of always up and down and turbulent? Is that just kind of someone who is maybe they've always had some mental wellness challenges going on? Is that just their personality, or is this someone who's not dealing with things in their life correctly? It was a super general statement, but what about those employees that are kind of hot and cold?
Yeah, so we're all emotional creatures. I think our primary function is to respond emotionally. So there's going to be some people that are just more steady than others, and there's going to be others that are just more emotionally volatile. They're just sort of on this kind of roller coaster, and that's okay. Neither of those are wrong. Neither of those are right. We're all just sort of unique. A strong suggestion I would have for business owners, especially small business owners, and I know the larger the company gets, the harder it gets, but how well do you actually know your employees? Do you know their name? Like obviously you know their names, but do you know their wife's name? Do you know their kid's name? Do you know if their kid is struggling in math or not? Do you have you actually had a conversation with them more than just, hey, where are those progress reports that I need? So I think evaluating, having a hard question for yourself as an owner is like, how relational am I with my employees? How well do I know them? And I don't think you have to know them so deeply. And I know it's challenging for a lot of us. If you have 70 employees, like that's a lot of names. It's a lot of, spouses. That's a lot of kids, a lot of grandparents. How do I do all that? Right. I get that for sure.
Yeah. But then you have people that run those departments that could be at that level. But I think what I hear you say is you don't have to invest a ton emotionally, but take the time to at least hear their story and what's going on in their world, and so you have maybe a baseline or a point of reference, or it's an understanding of who they are. And are they someone who lives in turmoil, or are they kind of someone who's got a real, they've been married for 20 years and family, and it's pretty consistent, and just kind of helps you understand who they are. So if things do go wrong and they start acting differently, it's easier to notice.
Exactly.
So a lot of business owners, and I think we all do it, right? Because we all think the world revolves around us. But when so I've been coming to work, and I've been there for 2-3 years doing a great job. And all of a sudden, my give a shit meter falls off the map, and you're thinking, I don't care anymore. I'm not trying very hard. They take it personally, and they think, well, they're doing this to me, and this is my livelihood, and we're trying to put food, paychecks for all these people, and they're putting that in jeopardy. And it causes them a lot of stress because they see the effects of their behavior or lack of behavior on their business, right? So what could they do, or is there kind of an exercise or a question they could ask themselves to kind of bring themselves to a point where they say, okay, I need to maybe investigate this and see what's really going on?
Yeah, exactly. So Walt Whitman has a wonderful quote that I love, which is, be curious, not judgmental.
That's Ted Lasso.
Yeah, he uses that in the show.
Yeah.
So Walt Whitman's beautiful quote is amazing. And so it's just this idea of really challenging ourselves just to be curious. So anytime I have to have a hard conversation with an employee, I always just start it off conversationally with, what's going on? Like, tell me about you. Where are you at right now? What's your story? Before we get into the hard part of, here's how you're not performing well. So let's just be curious. What's going on? Tell me more about that. I've noticed this change kind of happen, instead of being judgmental and taking it personal, moving into this ego space, which is very challenging for us as entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs usually have very healthy egos, because we believe that we can take on the world and do the impossible, so, which many of us can and many of us do. And so it's kind of like, when you become successful as an entrepreneur, that ego gets really, really strong,
So it's shifting, but the old world mentality was work is work, home is home. You don't talk about your personal life. If your boss asks you how you're doing, you say fine. And now, there's the other extreme where, bring your whole self to work, which means all your baggage and all your problems, which I don't know if I agree with totally either. But all that to say, sometimes when you ask people what's going on, some of them are just going to give it to you, right? And you're going to think, whoa, that's too much. Some of them might give you what you're looking for, but some of them might say, no, it's fine. Was there something going on? Yeah, don't worry about it. It's okay. So how might you kind of draw that out, or let them know it's okay? Like, I'm here to help. Yeah.
So one, I don't really know that that's your responsibility as a business owner, right? Of drawing it out of them, right? We want to meet people where they are, right? That's the most important thing. We cannot solve the problem for them. We can't do it for them. There's no amount of doing that we can do to make them feel safe, right? Other than just providing a healthy work environment, right? But outside of that, there's nothing you can do to make this person want to talk to you. Sometimes they just don't want to talk. That's about them, right? That has nothing to do with you. But continuously providing that open door atmosphere, continuously providing a warm and inviting space for them to engage in, and then letting them know that you're here. If they ever want to talk, that door's open. But we can't make them talk.
And if you know something's going on but they won't tell you, should you then stop any corrective action you were thinking about, or should you stop that conversation, or should you still have it, or does it change? Does the context change? What are your thoughts on that?
No, so I don't think we want to coddle them at all. I think if you still have performance measures that your employee needs to make, I mean, they still need to make those measures. Yeah, if they are going through some kind of debilitating depression, if they just found out they have bipolar disorder, right, or something like that, some significant medical issues, significant mental health issue. If an employee broke their leg, we would say, yeah, oh my gosh, you need to get the short-term disability. You need to go have some bed rest. Don't work for a while.
Or make accommodation for them so they can do something, right?
Exactly. In same course of action, right? If this person finds out that all of a sudden now they have major depressive disorder, then like, yeah, we want to support you in that. We want to take the appropriate steps for that. We want to get you help, right? But at some point, you still have to be able to do your job. And so that's where we have that conversation of what does this look like down the road? We don't all of a sudden say, okay, you are allowed to do 50% less work than everybody else. We don't do that. Just the same as the person who just broke their leg. We don't say you do 50% less work than everybody else. We'll work with them for a while to figure out what it is.
Okay.
And then move forward.
So let's say someone says to you, man, I'm going through a divorce.
Yeah.
And you say, wow, that's rough. Sorry to hear that. And they say to you, like, I don't know what to do. Or you get the impression as an employer, like they're really struggling and they feel like they're on an island and they don't know what to do. Is there anything as an employer? I know we can't care for them and we can't do it, but are there any resources or what would you recommend? Like what lifeline would you throw them to kind of, so they can go get the help they need? Because that's the right thing for them, and it's the right thing for your business, and it's the right thing. I mean, if you really help someone through a tough time like that, you have to think that they're going to be very loyal people, and it's that's going to, if that's your culture and reputation, people are going to appreciate that and tell people about that, and it's going to help you down the road. So yeah. as I guess long way around, as an employer, once they tell you something, A, are you obligated to help them? And B, if you are obligated or choose to help them, what could you do, or what are some options that a business owner has?
Yeah, so I think just like if it was a medical problem or a financial problem, right? These also always come with some kind of anxiety or depression attached to them. But we just have the same level of obligation that we have to everything else, right? Which is, we want to care for our people. We want to invest in our people and do the best we can for them, right? Because the more we invest in our people, the more we're investing in our company and the more we're investing in growth, right? So that's human capital, right? We want to invest in our people first, our employees first. I really disagree with companies that say they're client first. I think you got to be employee first.
That's the Virgin model, Richard Branson, right? He was the one who came out and said, no.
Because if we take care of our employees, then they're going to take care of the customer, right, or the client, or whoever it is. So we really want to invest in our people. And now, what's your obligation to help this guy, resolve his personal life? Zero, right? That's kind of where our relationship ends. It's a business professional relationship, not a personal relationship. However, he's bringing that into the office. So we now have to deal with it one way or the other. We could say, hey,
just a quick interjection there. You said they're bringing it into the office.
Oh yeah.
Is it possible for someone to say, like, just stop bringing it to the office? Or if that's going on in your world, is it coming with you regardless, if it's that big, if it's that life altering?
Right. You can say it all you'd like, but I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's within reality to bifurcate something that emotionally strong. Right. How does Jim go from his personal life and, being hit by a wrecking ball to driving in on his, his standard 22-minute commute? I think that's the average commute in America, right? To his job, to open the door and say, oh, I'm great. Everything's good. I'm here to do 100% of the work, and 100% of the mindset. Just the same as if somebody had an upper respiratory infection, you wouldn't expect them to perform to the same level. They'll probably bring in, 80% today or 84%, whatever it is. So it's impacting you one way or another. It's
Right.
impacting that person's relationships with their coworkers. So it's damaging. So in that way, we definitely want to invest. We want to have a plan for mental health resources for our employees. We
Okay.
want them to know that plan, and we want to model that stuff. We want to model
Okay.
healthy behavior.
So when you say model, kind of give us an example of what that might look like.
Yeah, so I think the old guard mentality is rub some dirt on it, and I love that saying because that was my childhood, man, was like rub some dirt on it, get back out there. I
In
think
high school, I had a friend who broke his leg playing
yeah,
hockey, and the coach just made him walk back and forth behind the bench, like walk it off and put him back out there. And
yeah,
after the game, he found out he broke his leg. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like it's fine, go. Like, is the bone sticking at your body? No, go, you're good. So I think that's kind of done now.
yeah,
So this idea of let's not be tough, let's be vulnerable. I think there's a place for toughness, but I think if you really want to display toughness, be vulnerable with somebody. Vulnerability is always met with vulnerability. Now, I don't think you need to come into work talking about your divorce. I don't think that's appropriate, right?
right.
Or spreading all your drama around the office. But when you're vulnerable with your employees, when they say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" and you're like, "Man, I am not doing good. Like, let me tell you about some of the stuff I'm dealing with." That vulnerability is always met with vulnerability.
Okay, so I want to clarify that point. So you're saying be vulnerable, meaning don't go in there and be a stoic and saying everything is always good with me, because we talked about in the past, culture isn't words on a page on a wall. Culture is the way the ownership and leadership work. So if you go in and nothing is ever wrong, then the trickle down culture is you're not allowed to talk about what's going on in your world, right? And so what I think I hear you saying is if as a leader you allow yourself to be vulnerable at times, then when you go to have these conversations with someone you think might be struggling with something, they will return it.
Yeah, they look at you as a real person, which is important because as much as we try to be superhuman, we simply are not.
Right. I agree with that. Now, I feel the need to ask, like, is addiction someone who might be a recovery or has had been recovered in an alcoholic for 10 years and got fallen off the wagon, or someone who would have been addicted to drugs, is this the same, or are addiction issues, do we need to deal with those a little differently, because they're becoming more, well, I think they're pretty common, but people are more open about them these days.
They are, and I think a lot of people do struggle with alcohol and drugs, and I think that's very normal. And if you are struggling with that, you are definitely not alone. There are many, 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 many other people that struggle, just as you do. And if you have an employee that's struggling with that, we definitely want to offer them a lifeline. We want to help. We want to continue to invest in our people. However, that does not excuse the behavior, and it does not excuse their inability to measure up to the standards that the company has set. Right?
Their performance, right? That's
Exactly.
okay. Very
Yeah.
cool.
If somebody comes in and they got drunk at a happy hour with clients there and kind of lost 2 accounts or something like that, and then the next day say, "Hey, I have a problem," like take the alcohol out of the equation. Like, would they have been fired, or would you have invested in them? Like, what would you do? The alcohol does not excuse the behavior. We definitely want to be sensitive to it. We want to invest in our people. We want to meet them where they are, but that doesn't give them a get out of jail free card, essentially.
Hey, Chris, I think for me, what the clarifying point you're making is the performance matters
Hmm.
and helping the person matters, but we are in a professional relationship here, so we don't need to. I think most people want to help.
Yep.
We also have to understand where that line is, where we say, okay, we've offered you some lifelines or some resources. We've given you, we've watched it kind of play out for 3 months. Things aren't changing.
Right.
Now we need to make a harder decision about if, termination or whatever it is. And I think that's important to understand. Like, we can be empathetic and sympathetic to these people, but we also are running a business. So we need to understand there's a line in there. And I think that's important to know that as a business owner, it's great that you want to help people, but it's also okay at a point to say, I've tried to help. I've given it time. I'm not seeing it trending in the right direction. So I think we might need to part ways.
Yes, exactly.
But they could feel really guilty and shitty about that.
Yeah. And that's going to be a tough, guilt is a tough cookie, and that's a tough emotion to deal with. But know this, if you continue to enable somebody with an alcohol or drug problem, all you're doing is making the problem worse. You're helping them make the problem worse.
Right. But so devil's advocate, I'm a business owner. I'm like, hey, I didn't sign up for this stuff.
Yeah.
But you got it. You inherit it, because if you have 20 employees, how many of those people are probably dealing with an addiction issue?
Yeah.
By what percentage of the population are dealing with a mental health issue or an addiction issue or whatever, right? I don't know those numbers, but I'm you'll have something, right? If you have employees, you're going to have these issues.
Yes.
Okay. So I think we've knocked the crap out of, what does it look like? Mm-hmm. So now I'm in a business owner sitting here thinking, okay, this is great. Tell me how. So I've made all these mistakes. I've sought them down. I've taken a hard line. I haven't been empathetic. I've carried people too long, waiting for them to turn it around. I acted too quickly without understanding what was going on. So, and it feels like there's a real kind of gooey sweet spot here that is undefinable. But so if I want to start getting this right, I want to start being trying to understand what's going on, and I want to put a program in place for my employees, or I have someone right now that I'm thinking about, and I want to have a conversation with them. Other than calling you, what are the first 1, 2, 3 steps I should take to kind of create a plan or take action that is at best for my business and at the same time best for the individual, I guess? And that's a hard balance.
Yeah, it can be challenging. There's 3 very small, simple things you can do. One, know your benefits. Okay. So, if you are a company that provides health insurance benefits, and I know, like, depending on how big you are, you might not, but if you do, know what those benefits are, and make sure that your employees know what they are. Like, a lot of companies have really great health insurance benefits that have like $20 copays to go see a professional therapist.
And like an EAP, right?
No, that's just their normal health insurance.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. So it's $20 copay for a lot of people. Most people in Texas have Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's like 80% of the population. So it's like most of those plans, the PPOs, they're $20, $40, $60 copays. Like that makes it a lot easier. And if you know that, then we can have that information out the gate and say, hey, you don't have to worry about it. Here's how much it costs.
Right.
So you know it. And you can get that information from your benefits administrator, from your broker, whoever. You call Blue Cross directly and say, I need to go see a therapist. The CPT code is 90837 if you want to just double check it. And they will tell you exactly what that copay is. So now you know that, and you have that available for your employees. 2, you model that healthy behavior like we just talked about. You don't need to be in therapy if you don't want to be in therapy, right? But if you got something else going on in your life, use your own benefits and go get some help. It's not a crazy idea. It's really not. It's very simple. But if you don't, I'm sure that you know somebody that does, right? That you have a family member that's struggling, that you have a friend that's struggling. You don't need to use their names or whatever, but let your people know that that's something that's in your life, right? In some way. Like maybe you have a sister who has bipolar disorder. Maybe you have a mother-in-law that's struggling with some kind of mental issue, right? And just be transparent about that stuff with your people to an appropriate level, okay? And I'm not saying they need to know all your life story, but to an appropriate level. And the third one is have a plan of where to go when something comes up. Have a plan of where to go. Just like we have, fire drills and little maps everywhere that say, here's the quickest way to the stairs. Like we all don't know where the stairs are. How do we get out of the building, right? This is exactly what you want in place for mental health is where do we go? And, definitely like me, sure, great. But contact a counseling group, near you in advance and say, here are our benefits. We want to make sure that if something comes up at work, we want to send people to you.
Oh, so proactively,
Yes.
someone out on speed dial kind of deal.
Yeah. So now it's like, hey, Jim, who's going through a divorce, hey, buddy, have you considered counseling? Like, we have a $20 copay with this group over here. You can sign up online right now. Now, all of a sudden, Jim's hour-long conversation that we just had with him, he now leaves with an action item, right? You have helped him, connect him to real help. Do that. And if you don't have health insurance benefits, still call up a private counseling group and say, hey guys, we'd like to set up a private EAP program with you. Like, is that something you're willing to do with us? We have about a dozen of those set up right now. One with a company who has never called us. And
it's like an independent, they pay you X amount per month, and then their employees can call you whenever they need something.
Exactly. And so we have one set up with a company over here. They've never used it in 3 years. Never. But they just want to have it there. We have another one who we see 200 of their employees, 200 of their employees, like all throughout the state, because we're throughout all of Central Texas. So it's like, I mean, some people really use it, some don't, but the fact is that it's there,
right,
ready to go.
So all three of those points, I would have, especially like the be proactive and just know who they can call right away, like do that homework for them.
Yep.
The last question I have for you is, I know some people, I don't. I have been to counseling and will go again because I find it really valuable. It's great to just kind of offload some stuff. But there are some people, there's a stigma around sitting down and talking about your feelings, and we don't need to do that. And sometimes people can feel like it's a little airy, artsy out there. Some people feel it's too hard-lined. So what would you tell people that have a stigma around, I would never do it?
Well, I mean, first, we can't change the mind, right? So if that's how that's what they feel about it, we'll just accept that and say, okay, but if you would ever like to change your mind, here is an option for you. 2, modeling that behavior. I go to therapy. I have my own therapist. I tell all of my employees, who are therapists, by the way, that they should be in therapy, all the time. I'm like, get into therapy. It's good for you. Could you imagine if you could just go see somebody for an hour a week and just tell them anything that you're thinking or feeling, and then they just validate you? Like, that's a really good feeling. So go to therapy, try it out. But really, the stigma is waning a lot. It's really kind of dissipated. But if somebody doesn't want to go, man, we can't make them, and it might not be right for everybody. So it doesn't have to be therapy. Let's find local support groups. You can also call that therapy group that you just set up this EAP with and said, hey, do you guys have any community resources? Like, I've got an employee that's struggling, say, with like a porn addiction, but he's just too shamed to come in and actually talk about it. He's just not ready yet. Do you guys know any support groups in the area? I know 5, yes. And they can give you that. And often those resources are free.
That's great. I think, this is such a valuable conversation. And the world feels like it was it went from, we don't need this stuff. And we've gone to, there's so much mental health stuff going on with, COVID and all those things. And most people are somewhere on that spectrum in terms of what they need. But I always try to have these conversations through the lens of a business owner and understanding that you don't need to be a counselor. You don't need to solve problems. These are my takeaways from the conversation. You don't need to be a counselor. You don't need to solve problems. You're there to kind of understand and be empathetic, offer resources, but also let them know there's an expectation of, hey, I know you're going through some stuff now, and we'll accommodate you for X amount of time. And if they don't rise up, then it's still okay for you as a business owner to say, hey, I think you need more time. Let's pause here. Unfortunately, it's not working out, but go take care of yourself and do that. Am I missing anything?
No, that's it 100%. There was another article in the Wall Street Journal that mentioned that employees that were surveyed, only 24% of them believed that their employer actually cared about them.
And that's, I mean, look, I talk to people all day, every day about new jobs. And the number one question I get now that never used to be the number one question is, what are the benefits? Number two is, what's the schedule? We talk about flexible and inflexible jobs, right? If it's a flexible job, can be done from home or not. Is there a hybrid or a remote element to that? And then pay. And it used to be pay, title, PTO, but that has changed. And your reputation is your best recruiting tool. And people want to work for someone that they think gives a shit, right?
Exactly.
Or someone who thinks like them. If you have an environment where it's cutthroat and whoever works the hardest gets a promotion, and that's what you're clear about, and those are the people in your environment, and that's what they thrive on, perfect. But if you as a person are a caring person and believe that's important, then that you're doing a disservice by not making that part of your culture and hiring people that value that too.
Yeah, sorry. I'm so happy I made it 30 minutes into the show.
I know that upper respiratory is really taking its toll. Or either that or you're lamenting the loss of your hairdresser. I can't figure it
out. But no, even at that show Billions, I mean, they had a therapist in the office, it's just, they just called it something different.
Yeah, fair enough. That's right. Yeah. I remember that. Very cool. Okay. Well, hey, thank you so much for the information, Chris. If people are watching this or listening to this and they think, man, I got to talk to that guy a little more about what I can do for my employees, how can we reach you?
Yeah, TaylorCounselingGroup.com. Pretty simple. You can find all the information you need right there. Send an email. I'll get it.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about the Epiphany app, because I think that's been very cool.
Yeah, Epiphany, first of its kind. It's a mental health app. It's actually developed by therapists. It offers an immersive therapeutic experience that places a strong focus on emotions rather than problems. It is designed to guide users through therapeutic series and stories that have been thoughtfully crafted by mental health professionals, ensuring a supportive and enriching experience.
And all that right off the top of your head.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Is there anything else we need to know about you, Chris?
Yeah, if you've ever been helped by a mental health professional and you think you'd like to give back to the mental health community, Counseling for the Future Foundation is a great way where you can donate to provide a full ride scholarship for a student in school studying to become a therapist, because we don't have enough of them. And that's counselingfutures.org.
That's awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Look, I know you're busy. I know you're sick. I know you got a bunch of stuff going on in your world. I appreciate you carving out some time to talk to us and to the audience. There was a ton of value there, and I really, really appreciate you hanging in there with us and getting this done.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm really happy we were able to make it today.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
So there he is, Chris Taylor from the Taylor Counseling Group. Incredible information. It's so nice to understand. It's so neat for me, and I hope everyone else gets the value out of this, but there's so many nuances and silly questions that we're afraid to ask about, how do we deal with an employee? Or if we go back to Sasha Crabtree's podcasts on how do we build a process, and, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? So it's so neat to have these people with such a wealth of knowledge come in here and just break it down and make it so simple and approachable and easy to understand. And I'm super grateful for that, that people are still coming on here and talking about this stuff. And I hope everyone got some value out of this podcast as well. So if you want to connect with me, you can always check out our website, keyhire.solutions. .solutions is the domain. You can check us out on LinkedIn, our Key Hire LinkedIn page. You can check us out on YouTube. There's hours of content on YouTube. You can watch all kinds of stuff, or you can listen to the podcast on any of the major providers. If you like them, if you're on these platforms and you like what you hear, please give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, give us a share, help us spread the word. We're trying to do good work and help small business owners. So So we will see y'all in 2 weeks. We'll be back in November. This is, I think, what are we, episode 5 or 6 for season 2 here, Matt? Challenging. I think this was episode 6, 5 or 6. Anyway, we'll see you with the next episode in 2 weeks. Until next time, stop grinding, start growing.